Most of you are probably familiar with the technology and features that come hand in hand with AI-driven AP automation. Things like customizable KPI dashboards, electronic workflows, cloud-based infrastructure, and plenty more things. But what exactly does that mean for your business? How will it affect individual teams and your organization as a whole? I'm Scott Leahy, and this is Esker On Air. Today, we're going to put it all together for you and delve into what exactly the benefits and functions of AP automation mean for your end users, your managers, finance, administration teams, and your organization as a whole. I'd like to welcome our guest speaker, Geoff Ruffer. He's a business development manager here at Esker, and he's going to discuss how automation creates a more strategic role for AP and how your business can better capitalize on it. Geoff, welcome to the podcast.
Scott, thanks for having me. Seems like a lot to unpack in the next 10 to 15 minutes, my friend.
Well, that's exactly why you're here. So we're going to get into. So we're gonna get into kind of different roles and how this can affect the folks in those roles. But just to get going here, can you just share a little bit about this topic, expand on it a little bit, and kind of tell us why it's so important?
Yeah, I appreciate that. So one of the things that I'm passionate about is making sure people get the most out of whatever solution, if that's Esker or somebody else, that they possibly can. And one of the key tools, and I think really the foundation for any solution like this, is what I call the front end of it. And so the first question is, what is the front end? Well, the front end is the tools, the technology, the things that happen on the front end. Imagine that. That get those invoices in, get the relevant data from it that help the rest of the process. And so in Esker's case, that's the AI tool that we're talking about today. It's a tool that we've developed over many, many years. And I think it's something that really differentiates Esker from everyone else. And so the reason why that it's incredibly important, and we'll get into how it affects the organization as we go along here. But the reason why I think the AI tool is so incredibly important is it's really the foundation. That front end is really the foundation for the entire process. And so, as we talk about things like, hey, we're doing, three-way matches, and we're doing, these automated workflows, and we're doing all these really neat things, and we've got these great KPIs, all that good stuff that we're going to talk about. It really starts with the AI tool. And so if you're not getting all the relevant information that you need from an invoice, what does that mean? Well, that means you're probably doing data entry. So if you're doing data entry today into, for example, your ERP, and you spend money on an AI tool that's not helping you remove that, and you're doing data entry into another system, have you really gained anything? Right? And so that's why that AI tool is so important. It's going to pull that data from the invoice so that you don't have to. And that data and that AI tool is the foundation then, because that's the data that you use for, hey, here's a PO number, right? Let's go ping a database and see if we receive this. Let's do the three-way match. Or, hey, here's a project number off an invoice. We're going to use that to create a workflow, right? Things like that. That's the key to this whole thing. And without that, you're really not gaining. And the problem is, and I'm getting on my soapbox a little bit here, but the problem is, as a guy who's been doing this for a long time, longer probably, Scott, than you've been alive, everybody will tell you that. So if you're an AP person, if you're a controller, you're a CFO, and you're listening to this podcast, I'm not the first guy. I'm not the first business development manager, sales guy that's going to tell you that our AI tool is the best. And that's the frustrating part. So, some unsolicited advice to all the people that are listening is make sure that, when you're in that sales demo and everything works perfectly, and look at all this great information we got, and look at this workflow we calculated. Oh, isn't this great? Everything matched, and we've got this great, three-way match, or, whatever the situation is and how wonderfully it works. Make sure you spend the time to just dive in there. just get, so to speak, under the covers. How did that work? What's the AI tool like? Is it yours? Is it somebody else's? Is it, what's it based on? How often does it get improved? And, are there people working on it and those kinds of things? Because again, that is the foundation for everything else we're going to talk about today, is that AI piece. And so that's my quick intro that you let me have. I appreciate that. But that's why it's so important. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it does. And going to the second part of what I started with, let's talk about how this is going to affect some of the different roles within the organization. How is this going to help? What does this mean for an end user?
Yeah, so this is one of my favorite things. And when people say, you know, why do you do what you do? This is one of the things I do what I do, because end users, the guys in the people in the trenches are doing this in day in and day out. And one of the things that is really neat to hear about post implementation, you go back 3, 6 months, a year later and say, what was the biggest benefit? It's neat to hear about the increases in things like job satisfaction, taking away manual work. And we like to say is taking away some of that um, reactive work, right? Like it lands on my desk, I got to take care of it, right? Taking away some of that reactive work, some of that less manual work, the data entry, those tasks that nobody really likes to do, and letting them do things that are proactive, or giving them the opportunity to do things that are proactive, because some of that manual work, again, from that AI tool, getting the right data, taking some of that manual work away, and add in more value added tasks. It's really cool to see and hear people talk about how this has increased their job satisfaction. So from that is, things like increases in responsibility. Hey, now I'm doing like some vendor management. Hey, I'm dealing with vendors that are, more problem to the process. Things like no overtime, a lot less stress, right? Like less data entry, the data is available. So in Esker's case, with that AI tool, because it's so good, as soon as that invoice hits the platform, not as soon, right? I mean, there's a technical, right, 30 seconds before it's reportable. But think about like accruals, for example, right? So accruals can be a stressful process. But if that invoice hits the system and the AI tool is strong enough, you can have that data to report on if somebody sees it or not. So if that's sitting in a queue in Esker, that invoice is going to be reportable. And so you're taking away stress, you're taking away, think about the crunch time, end of the month, that kind of stuff. We're going to help with that. So long answer to your short question, man, but I think you boil it all down to you guys let me talk, so it's gonna be like this for the rest of the day here. uh the underlying uh factor, I think, would be job satisfaction. The other side of it is, this is pretty remote friendly. So when you think about where we are now, we've certainly can talk about the increase in customers we've received, because a system like this is incredibly remote friendly, whether it's an app or you're at the local coffee shop with Wi-Fi. This is the tool to help you with that.
Yeah, and moving up that ladder. What does this look like for, say, you are a manager? What does this look like for you, and what does it look like for your department?
Yeah, so I guess another one of my favorite ones. I got a quick story, which is I did a deal with the company that, it's a multi-billion-dollar company in Ohio, and I met the AP, some of the AP staff, and the AP manager. We were chatting over lunch, and she said, talked about how she'd been there forever, and if she's listening to this, hey, but she talked about how she got her job, and it was that, she practiced 10 keying in a phone book so she could be faster, than everybody else, because that was the metric they used to hire people. And that was, 20 years ago. Um, the people nowadays, and so this goes to recruitment and retention. The people nowadays, the AP folks that are going to do this job, have grown up with a cell phone in their hand, have grown up with, apps and software and all that kind of good stuff. That this is really a tool. If you look at the broader sense, this is really a tool to help with recruitment and retention, because the people you're going to look at to do this job now are people that have grown up in this world, and they're not going to do data entry. So I think back about that woman that, practiced 10 keying to get the job. That's not the world anymore, right? The world is, you're hiring these young guys that need, and I can say that because I'm an old guy, but you're hiring these younger guys that, are used to apps and software and that type of thing. So definitely recruitment and retention. As a manager, you've got some really access to incredible data, whether it's either data from, vendors, invoices, that type of thing, to, from a broader perspective, data on, who's taken how long to enter an invoice or process an invoice, what approvers are, your problematic approvers, what approvers are out there taking too long, those types of things. So there's a ton of data around that type of thing, which you call kind of the benefit of the system in general. That data is there. So whether it's, human metric data, vendor data, and everything's somewhere, right? So that invoice comes in, again, it hits the platform, it's reportable. So it's in the system. You're not losing it. You don't wonder if somebody grabbed it out of the inbox. You don't wonder whose desk it's on. You don't wonder what happened to it when you send it out for approval. Think about duplicate invoices even. There's a system to check that, right? What discounts are we in danger of losing? So hypothetically, if you had in your vendor master file your terms, and we pull the invoice in, and magically the AI tool, which again is the foundation for this whole thing, picks off the due date and can calculate, hey, you've got 20 days to pay this invoice based on what your terms are with this vendor, and maybe highlight the invoices that are in danger of being paid late or in danger of losing an early pay discount. That's the benefit of the AI tool again, and it's in this platform so that you don't have to worry about it. Everything's tracked, everything's in there. And then you could say, what does that mean? Well, with all that data, with the ability to do things like, hey, what are we missing? Discounts, those types of things. The other neat piece of this is you're really elevating AP's strategic importance to the organization as a whole. And so AP has grown out of, hey, we got to have AP. We're getting bills. We got to pay the bills, to now transitioning, and it's part of that reactive proactive thing on a higher level. Now we're viewed as a strategic partner of the organization because we've got access to all this data, because we have insight into various things. So it's pretty profound when you think about it.
Now, coming at it from maybe a different angle, what are some things, what are some benefits that, say, someone on the finance team or an administrator might notice here?
Yeah, so it's a little bit of a blend there. One of the things that would benefit them, or one of the things that that they'd look for, again, is that improved visibility into the human data, the invoice data, budget data, right? And accelerating the closing process, which is always a big one. So that accrual process, that closing process, just having access and visibility into that data helps that along a lot. The other thing to think about is, if all your vendors are sending your invoices into this system, improved supplier relations are certainly a part of that, right? And so that could be, you're not missing invoices. I had a customer that joked around that AP was getting it from both sides because they were project based, and they'd have an invoice that came in, and they misplaced the invoice, which means they paid the supplier late, which means they billed the project late. So they were not only upsetting their own customers, but they were upsetting their vendors as well. And so supplier relations, if you've got all that in one place and you're tracking it and you've got visibility into it, that's a key part of this as well. Um, Shout out to, like my treasury folks. If you want to pay invoices faster, you can do that. If you don't, you could do that too. I know treasury guys sometimes like to hang on to those, and you could do that. So improved cash flow could be one. Reduced payment cycles could be one if that's what your organization is after. Um, and then, things like reducing operating costs, right? So going from that reactive data entry, print it out, email it out, all that kind of stuff, that manual workflow, to a proactive approach with a strong AI tool and a strong software base. You're really going to reduce your operational costs. So, the cost of processing an invoice decreases, and maybe those people get assigned to do other things or more value-added tasks. And then the other thing is you're really better leveraging your investment in your ERP. And so I think anybody you talk to needs to be conscious of the investments you've already made in technology, and are you complementing those, right? Like we're never going to replace an ERP, but we certainly will make it run a lot better. There are tools out there like Esker that can do that. And so make sure, that you're doing that, and make sure that the technology you're investing in is complementary to the technology you've already invested in, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And I guess one final zooming out here, looking at the organization as a whole, are there some broad stroke points that we'll be able to see, at the business level?
Yeah, so I think two really big ones. One is think about the competitive advantage of a system like this, like a really good, which again starts with that foundation of a really good AI tool, and what it could mean from a competitive standpoint, right? Think about, you know, better managing cash flow. So that's an advantage. Taking full advantage of early pay discounts, avoiding liabilities like late payment discounts, those types of things. But also supplier management and being a better vendor, or a better partner. The other thing I would say is, especially right now, is improved business continuity. So with a system that's in the cloud, we've certainly seen an uptick in people inquiring about Esker just based on that. Being able to work from anywhere, having a viable app that approvers can use, for example, to process invoices. Those are kind of two of the big ones right now.
Well, I would say it's pretty clear that there are an abundance of benefits for all areas of an AP team when you're automating. So, Geoff, I want to thank you so much for coming on the podcast today and breaking all of this down for us. Um,
Yeah, it was
thank you
fun.
to our
Thanks for having me.
thank you to our listeners, as always, for joining us. If you're looking for more information on digital transformation in your business processes, you can find us at esker.com. In the meantime, stay safe, everyone, and we'll see you next time.